All right, so you're thinking about buying a home in Seattle, Washington, or maybe one of the surrounding suburbs. And naturally, the first question you're probably asking yourself is, can I even afford to live in Seattle? What is the cost of living there? And more importantly, you probably should be asking yourself, how does the cost of living in Seattle compare to the cost of living in the city that I'm moving from? Well, today, that's exactly what we're going to cover. I'm going to be taking a deep dive on everything that you need to know about cost of living in Seattle, groceries, housing, taxes, everything that you could imagine. And I'm also going to show you how you can do a dollar for dollar comparison of the city you're coming from. Compare that to the city you're moving to in Seattle and see exactly how they stack up in each department. So if you're ready to get after it, let's go. Now, this may not come as a surprise to you, but living in Seattle is kind of expensive. If you're coming from maybe California, one of the more expensive areas here on the West Coast, it's probably not going to be that big of a deal. You're used to it, you've been paying it, and it'll be just fine for you. But, maybe you're coming from the Midwest or the East Coast and you're used to a lower cost of living. Prices in Seattle might be kind of shocking for you. But here's one thing that I want you to keep in mind is that the average income in Seattle is higher than the national average. And there was a recent Forbes article that was released that gives a detailed breakdown of national average and state by state that I want to pull up real quick. Let's jump into my computer. I want to put kind of everything into perspective that yes, you're going to be paying a little bit more, but chances are you're probably going to be making more too. So let's jump into my computer real quick. All right, we have the article pulled up here. It is a Forbes.com article. Just a couple months ago, so very recent, which makes the data very fresh, very relevant. It's basically just an average salary by age in 2023. And what they've done is they've just taken a look at nationwide across the United States. And they've even gone one step further and broken it down state by state. So I want to pull up Washington, compare it to the national average for income, just to kind of show you what we're talking about, what we're looking at as far as, you making more money here when you do live in Washington. So let's scroll down real quick. And this first box here, this first set of data is the median earnings by age in the United States. And if you look in the left-hand side, this column here, it breaks it down into age groups. So starts from 16 to 19-year-olds. A lot of these kids are, getting their first jobs, either still in high school or just going into college. And then it breaks it down all the way up to 65 years and older, those golden years, the retirement years. So gives a nice breakdown by age. And what we're going to take a look at is the annual wage for each one of these age groups here. And if we scroll down a little bit further here, we have the average salary by age in each state. Now, the first thing that kind of jumped out to me, and I know that you're probably thinking it too because you're smart, is, they took an average salary by age for state by state, but then they took a look at the median earnings by when comparing it to the United States. So I feel like the average salary, that number is going to be a little bit skewed because, here in the Puget Sound area, there are probably quite a few high 6-figure, 7-figure salaries that are going to throw that average off by a lot. I would have loved to see a median salary by age, but I don't know, maybe that just isn't possible with the numbers they were looking at or whatever. Maybe you can explain it to me, maybe drop a comment down below and let me know. But nonetheless, we're going to be able to get a good comparison of, what you're going to be making or what the averages are here in Washington. So you look at Washington here in the second state right there below Virginia, but they looked at, household under 25. So under the age of 25, by average, you're going to be making $45,745. Okay. So if we jump up here to nationwide, so it's going to be these two grouped together here, 16 to 19 and 20 to 24. So 31, 38, let's just say 35,000, kind of the average there. And you'll see living in Washington, you're going to making about $10,000 more right off the bat with your first job. So definitely a little bit higher average here in Washington. Now you're looking at here 25 to 44. So a lot of these kids are getting out of college, getting their first jobs, getting established in their careers. On average in Washington, they're making $92,000 per year. And if we jump up to the median number for the nation, for that same age group, 25 to 44, we're looking 52, 63, let's just call it like $56,000, $57,000 being the median income. So 57 compared to 92, you can see there's quite a big jump in average here in Washington. Lots of high paying jobs. Tech industry is responsible for a lot of that. But you'll notice a big difference. You're making quite a bit more money here in Washington. And if we look at 45 to 64, kind of those prime earning years for most people, average in Washington, just over 100,000. So 100,122. And if we look in the national average here, so 45 to 65, we're looking 64, 63,000. So again, pretty big difference in what you're going to be bringing home every year. And basically what I'm trying to show you is that, yes, you're going to be paying higher in your cost of living, day-to-day, costs that you're paying, but chances are you're probably going to be making a lot more money too. And that definitely helps out. So I hope those numbers with regards to income living here in Washington state will help kind of put your mind at ease as we go over these cost of living numbers and categories that we're going to cover here. You're going to be making more money, so don't worry about it. You're going to be okay, all right? But, before we do that real quick, if this is your first time to the channel, welcome. My name is David Sappenfield, a local realtor and relocation specialist. And what that means for you is, as much as I love making these videos for you, I'd love even more to help you out with your real estate needs. All you need to do is reach out. Contact information's popping up on the screen right now. I'm the guy that answers the phone, returns text messages and emails. So I'm the one you're going to be talking to. All you got to do is reach out, and happy to help you make that smooth move to Seattle. All right, let's talk some numbers here. Now, when diving a little deeper into the cost of living, we're going to be taking a look at several different categories, and we're going to start with the overall cost of living comparison. After that, we're going to break it down into 7 different subcategories that make up that overall number that we're talking about. And the way that it's compared is you take the national average for these cost of living categories. And if you use 100 as the value for the national average cost of living, anything above 100 is going to be more expensive than the national average. Anything below 100 is going to be less expensive than the national average, okay? And stick around till later and I'll show you exactly where you can find these numbers and this data so you can plug in your city where you're coming from and compare them to Seattle. So you have a side-by-side, apples-to-apples comparison on how different it's going to be living here in Seattle. So to start off, the overall cost of living comparison to the nation is 167.8. So essentially what that means is it is 67.8% higher cost of living on average here in Seattle versus the nation. Now, for the state of Washington, it's not quite as intense as 67%. It's 21%, 21.9%, so 121.9 for overall the state. But as you get closer to the core in Seattle, those cities there in the close proximity to Seattle, it's going to be more expensive. And that's pretty common for most places. But 167.8 for the city of Seattle, so a little bit more expensive. Now let's get into the subcategories of what make up that number. The first category we're going to be taking a look at is the cost of groceries here in Seattle. And on average, you're looking around 108.7 or 8.7% more expensive to buy groceries here in Seattle versus the average for the nation. Now, we have a video on the channel here. I'll put a link for it right up here that really goes into a really intense breakdown of grocery costs. I compared 3 different stores and just kind of showed you exactly what things cost in the Seattle area. So if you want a little bit further after this video, go check that one out. I'll even put a link down in the description below so you have access to that. But on average, you're looking around 8.7% higher than the nation average for groceries. All right, the second category we're going to take a look at is the cost for healthcare. And this is where Washington kind of comes out in a positive light. The overall index there for healthcare, we're looking at an 88.2, which is lower than the national average, which is, what's that, like 11.2%, 11.8%. So we're ahead in that category. And the reason for that would be, a lot of the residents here in Seattle and the state of Washington in general were pretty health conscious. People tend to take care of themselves, work out, they're out bike riding, hiking, during the winter time, skiing, snowboarding. So, lots of activities, lots of stuff to do in this area, which I think keeps people healthier and overall just kind of keeps the cost of healthcare down a little bit lower, which is great. Okay, the next category we're going to talk about is housing. And this one, you might want to cover your eyes because this is where it kind of gets a little out of hand. But Seattle, when comparing to the nation average of 100, clocks in at a 292 point difference. Now, that is almost 3 times the national average. But remember, we're making more money here. I don't know if it's quite big enough to make up that gap in the housing disparity, but it's not as bad as you would think when you factor in you're making a little bit more money. But housing is definitely the lion's share of the biggest cost of living difference that you're gonna face, when you're comparing where you're coming from to where you're moving. That is definitely going to be the biggest piece of the pie right there, is those housing costs. So just keep it in mind. It's going to be more expensive here, but the further away you go from like downtown Seattle on the west side and then downtown Bellevue respectively on the east side, the further north and the further south you go from those cities, housing is going to get a lot more affordable. It's just, being right there in the core, you're going to pay a premium for it. But, hopefully you're making some good money and it won't be that big of a deal. And speaking of housing, the median home cost in Seattle checks in at $823,900. The nation average is $338,100, while the state of Washington average is right around $534,700. Now, when we're talking about renting, there's a couple different numbers that I want to share with you. For a 1-bedroom apartment, you're going to be on average right around $2,060 per month. Nationwide, you're looking at around $1,180 per month when it comes to a 1-bedroom rental. For a 2-bedroom rental, you're looking around $2,410 on average in Seattle, while the nation average checks in around $1,430 per month. So, that's the biggest difference. The rental and the price to buy a home is, quite a bit different than the national average. Okay, so the next category we're going to cover is utilities, and this is another box where Washington is lower than the national average. So Washington checks in at a 69 versus the 100 national average. So essentially around 31% less on average for your cost of utilities here in Seattle. And the biggest reason for that would be just our winters and our summers. Our weather is very, very mild. It never really gets too hot in the summer, and it never really gets that cold in the wintertime. During the summer, there probably maybe a week or two where temperatures might be above 90 and, we might have a little bit of a heat wave, but for the most part, summers are awesome. You're looking around 75, 80 degrees every day, barely any rain, and it's the best place in the world to be is in Seattle during the summertime. And during the winter, yes, we're known for the clouds and the rain, but it never really gets that cold either. So it always snows probably once or twice a year, I'd say on average. But for the most part, you're not really getting those really long cold snaps of 20-degree weather or, somewhere sub-freezing. Usually it's a couple times a year. It'll happen. It does. You got to protect the house, protect the pipes, make sure everything is taken care of just to be safe. But for the most part, it's pretty mild. You're going to be in the 40s and not too cold. So that is the biggest reason why our utilities are so affordable here in Seattle. Okay, the next category is transportation. And when we're talking about transportation, we're talking about price of gasoline, we're talking about insurance, car repairs, maintenance, we're talking about like public transportation, registration, title fees for your vehicle, all of that stuff kind of wrapped up into one kind of transportation category here. And Seattle checks in at a 137.5. So we're 38% higher than the national average. And there's a couple reasons for that. One being Seattle, or the state of Washington, has no income tax, and they're going to get their tax somewhere. So what they do is, it's wrapped up into gasoline taxes, registration fees, STA taxes, stuff like that. They're all involved with, renewing your vehicle's tabs on an annual basis. And, it just makes things more expensive when they're trying to fill these gaps of not having the income tax. So you definitely see that a little bit in the transportation category. So, 37% higher than the nation, but we don't have income tax. So that's a huge factor right there. Okay, the next category is just miscellaneous. And miscellaneous basically just covers the cost of like clothing, entertainment, basically eating out, any kind of stuff that you do for fun, or just kind of basic necessities like clothing, stuff like that. And Seattle checks in at a 150.7, so 51% higher than the national average. And, I guess that just kind of goes with the territory. The cost of goods and services here are going to be higher because cost of living is higher. Minimum wage is higher here in Seattle than the nation average by far. So a lot of those costs get passed on to the consumer, us. And, that's kind of what we're used to. And it's not too bad. It's expensive to do anything these days, I think, anywhere, but I wouldn't say it's out of hand when comparing Seattle to everywhere else, because like I keep saying, we make more money here, and that's just the way it is. So lots of numbers and data that I've been throwing at you here, and you're probably wondering, that's great and all, but how does it compare to the city that I'm coming from? And I have a great resource for you that I think you should check out. And that is a website called Bestplaces.net. And you can go there, you can input any city that you're looking for into the search bar, whether it's Seattle or the city you're coming from. And it has a really great feature on there. Once the city that you're looking for populates, you can click on that compare to feature, and it will side by side list, Seattle versus LA, or, whatever city that you're coming from. And it's just a nice side-by-side, apples-to-apples comparison on what you can expect when living in Seattle. You can even go as far as to put your income in there, and it'll kind of give you an additional breakdown on stuff like that. But super helpful resource, bestplaces.net. Great information on comparing cost of living, and also has a lot more information other than cost of living. Just goes into a deep dive on everything that you would need to know about living in any area, whether it's Seattle or somewhere else, anywhere else in the nation here. So great resource for you to check out. And if you're thinking about making a move to Seattle, whether it's next week or next year, give us a call, shoot us a text, send us an email. Our contact information's popping up on the screen right here. All you got to do is reach out. We're happy to help you make that smooth move to Seattle. And until next time, hope to see you around. Take care. Bye.